This is the Kodak Ektar H30. This is the Kodak Ektar H35, and this has easily become one of my newest favorite cameras, and I plan on taking this with me everywhere I go, every single day. Welcome to those of you who are new here. So why do I think that this camera should be a requirement for all photographers to own? This is a cheap refillable camera, meaning you're actually loading your 35mm film into this as opposed to those cheap disposable cameras where you just get rid of the entire thing, because they seem to at least be a slightly more sustainable option for having tiny little point and shoots like this. But what makes this specific camera very unique and special? And it's in the name. This is an H35 camera, standing for half of a 35mm. Typically with film photography, the overall resolution and ISO is determined by the type of film that you're using. This camera takes 2 pictures on the same amount of space that would have been 1 picture on 35mm film. So you're basically cutting your pictures in half so that you can have 2 images, and this effectively doubles the amount of pictures that you're normally able to take. And why I think that's so incredible is because of how budget friendly this really is. This camera cost $40, which is an extremely low cost to get into film photography. And because you're doubling the amount of pictures that you can take, using this camera basically turns all of your film into half off, which is a nice little way to think about it. So with all that said, you probably are thinking, well, if you're basically cutting the resolution in half, wouldn't there be extremely noticeable loss in quality? And yes, it does cut down the resolution, but I think this trade-off is completely worth it, and I don't think that it's a deal breaker for quality, especially for the type of camera that this is. The reason this camera exists is to be this quick, easy, accessible camera that's with you always, that's going in tandem with whatever it is that you're doing or shooting. So if you are those people who are worried about quality, you would probably be using something a little bit more professional anyway. On a lot of professional shoots, people will have their, nicer cameras, but your phone kind of acts as this secondary filler that just kind of adds more to your memories, and the H35 perfectly slots into this analogy as well. This is the camera that fits right in your pocket. It's always with you, so as long as you're not shooting mostly inside, you don't have to worry about charging it, because all it takes is a AAA battery, and that's only for the flash. You don't have to worry about settings because there are none to set. It's got a 1/100 shutter speed, a 9.8 aperture, and a 1 meter minimum focusing distance, which is an extremely averaged out amount of settings to fit 90% of situations that you'd be in. And like I mentioned, if you're indoors, you absolutely do have to use the flash, but again, it's just a simple AAA battery, so nothing to worry about there. Now, speaking of its specs, 1/100 is fairly slow, so if you are a bit shaky, you will definitely notice a motion blur, but I really think that the 1/100 shutter speed is not a limitation, but a feature, because I think some imperfect and blurry photos even have a lot of charm to them. So in my opinion, even if you mess up or you're quickly grabbing something and it's blurry, I love that, because it shows that this moment happened so quickly you didn't want to miss it. This moment was fleeting and you capture the moment. I think it's awesome. So what is it that makes this camera so special and unique? It's stupid easy to use, super beginner friendly. You couldn't possibly mess it up because there is nothing to mess up. It's a super cheap camera, so you don't have to worry about destroying this thing or ruining it. It doubles the amount of pictures that you're taking, so it's extremely budget friendly too. I think this is an excellent gift for anyone, even if they're not photographers. And also, look at this thing. It's beautiful. This is plastic, and it still looks great. It's awesome to just have around always, and it's also a great stepping stone if you're wanting to get more into film. Because here's the thing that you don't really realize about film photography. Film photography isn't necessarily about nailing the shot. It's about increasing the volume of opportunities to nail the shot. And what do I mean by that? Film can be really finicky. Sometimes your settings can be off. Sometimes your reading can be off. There are so many variables that can happen, and every type of film film that you use, you basically have to start that whole process over of discovering what the best settings are for different situations. There's a laundry list of things that can go wrong, so most film photographers, even if they intend to get one shot, are shooting this multiple times at different exposures because these aren't things that you can just repeat very quickly as opposed to digital. Which is why I say that volume is the key to film photography. And what better camera to have than one that doubles the amount of pictures? It's basically like an extra life in case you're worried about messing up a shot. Okay, wow, so I've ranted and raved about this camera quite a bit. I promise I'm not sponsored by Kodak or anything. I am just such a fan of film photography, and having a tool like this allows me to be a bit more experimental, a bit more low risk. I love finding tools and gear that remove steps in the process for me so I can just focus on making stuff. Anyway, that's it for this short one today. Do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.